And now, wielding a red sword.
Chapter 10. Thanatos. Concerned by what fate had told him of Satan's designs, Mim tried to talk to Rapture about it that night. "I think you would be better off with Luna in the mortal realm," he sang. "Since you can still readily spend the nights with me here, the separation is really not that onerous." "With the cousin of the woman you loved before me?" she inquired bittersweetly. "Ouch! Who informed you of that?" "Lila, of course." "Lila, the creature of Satan. She's an interesting woman. She will make you an excellent concubine." "I'm not so sure I want a demoness for a concubine. She surely serves the interests of Satan before mine." "You don't like the notion of any woman serving any interest before yours?" This was not the type of question Rapture had asked before this. Mim wasn't sure he liked the change. "I don't like the notion of being that close to a creature provided by the incarnation of evil." "Oh, pooh," she said. "Lila isn't evil. She's an educated woman." "What is she doing in hell, then?" "She says it was a bum rap." "A what?" "A bum rap, a false charge, a misunderstanding. Before she realized she was in hell and couldn't get out, so she makes the best of it." "It still sounds suspicious to me. She's a demoness." "Oh, don't be such a fuddy-duddy." "A what?" "An old-fashioned bore." "It sounds like reduplicating echoism to me. This Occidental slang does not become you, Rapture. Don't forget you are a princess. Was a princess, now I'm a woman, and so is Lila. Oh, the things I am learning from her." "Like what, apart from gossip and slang?" "Like this," she said, and kissed him in a fashion that made his skin heat. "You're coming on like a concubine," he protested. "I'm coming on like a woman who is learning what it's all about." "A princess does not need to know what it's all about." "But a woman does. Lila is certainly right about that." "I really think you would be better off with Luna Kaftan." "Luna is a fine woman, and I like her, but now that I know how similar she is to your former love, I prefer to keep my distance from her, and your distance too. It's enough trouble adapting to this new lifestyle without having to worry about what's going on in your mind." He found that concern singularly difficult to address. He felt no romantic attraction for Luna, but it was true that his new knowledge of her relation to Orb worked a subtle effect on him. Where was Orb now? How had she fared after he had deserted her? Had the ring enabled her to cope adequately? She had been a Western woman, and he had loved her. Now Rapture was assuming some Western attributes, and he did not find them appealing in her. Perhaps there was justice in her disinclination to remain with Luna. "Well, perhaps you could stay with another mortal woman," he suggested. "Why, I like it here. The food is good, the grounds are beautiful, and Lila is a fine companion. Soon she is going to take me to visit hell." "To visit hell?" he exclaimed in sing-song, almost choking. "I don't want you going near that place." "You prefer that I sit in the castle all day sewing handkerchiefs?" He sighed. It was true that there was not a lot for her to do here in Purgatory. "Perhaps you could find something to do in the mortal realm to keep you busy. I'm sure Luna would—" "Her again. She seems much on your mind." Unfortunately true, after the dialogue with fate. He had never expected to be thrown into the company of Orb's close relatives. But because he had known Orb well, he trusted those relatives, and he wanted to get Rapture away from the insidious influence of Satan. "I just feel that Satan means to do you some mischief, and it would devastate me to have that happen." She softened. "That's an unprincely thing to say. Why don't you just order me to do what you wish?" "Because I love you." "You know that's a decadent Western concept." But she could not suppress her pleasure. "I will seek some mortal employment." "That pleases me." Then they made love, and all was good. The next situation requiring the personal attention of Mars was in Latin America. Conquest, slaughter, famine, and pestilence were eager to get to work, but Mim lacked proper enthusiasm. Increasingly, he was wondering whether he was the proper man for this office. He had been trained for command and for war, but he took no special joy in it, especially not in pointless bloodshed. He would prefer to abolish war. But there was the conflict of interest, because if he succeeded, he would lose the office, and where would he be then? Locked into this alien afterlife, his mortal life completed. What chance at the ultimate relief of nirvana would he have then? He had learned that new incarnations had a period of apprenticeship or trial, after which they could voluntarily give up the offices. Perhaps it would be best for him to do that, to step down when that chance came. Would that return him to mortal status? He suspected so. But what offered then? Would he have to resume his position as heir prince to Gujarat, displacing the man he had established in his place and marrying the Princess of Rajasthan? That would be horrible. Suppose he could step into the mortal world in some other capacity, become a new person in the Occidental world. That had its appeal. But what would he do? He was trained to be a prince, and that was not a preferred employment in the West. Also, he was a stutterer. He had made it on sing-song well enough, but that was in large part because he had held positions of extreme power, both as prince and as the incarnation of war. Others did not laugh at the powerful. They accommodated their idiosyncrasies. But if he tried to assume an unpowerful position, no. He would have to make do with the situation he had, try to be the best Mars he could be, and, if he succeeded in abolishing war, to retire to whatever the afterlife offered. This was not a bad existence, really. He could emulate Musashi, author of 5 Rings, learning to prevail through humility and hard work. That book spelled out the way to learn the author's strategy very simply and directly, in the section on the ground. To think honestly, to train, to learn every art and know the ways of all professions. To distinguish between gain and loss, develop intuitive judgment, perceiving what could not be seen. To pay attention even to trifles, and to do nothing that was of no use. In sum, to be honest and perceptive and purposeful throughout life. So easy to read and to agree with, but sometimes so hard to honor. How would Musashi have handled the situation with Rapture? Mim sighed. As far as he could tell, the great Japanese samurai had never married or formed any significant relation with a woman. Perhaps he had been most practical of all in that. They arrived at the site. It was a jungle. Lush tropical growth spread all about. "What's the situation?" Mim asked. "Muddled," Conquest replied. "This is a guerrilla war festering for a number of years. I was surprised when it died down at the time of your ascension because the underlying causes had not changed." "Satan had a hand in that," Mim sang. "He didn't like my predecessor." "True, but Satan's grudges are legion." "So we don't really know how things are faring here, because guerrilla warfare is not open and measurable," Mim said. "We only know that there will be bloodshed, much of it by innocence." "Yeah," Slaughter said raptly. "But there is a strong indication that something of extreme significance is about to occur at this site," Conquest said. "That's why this action requires our personal supervision." "I should have known there would be more to it than mere routine destruction and killing," Mim sang sourly. "Just what kind of development is this?" "We don't know," Pestilence said, "but I feel it in my flesh, so it must relate to me." Mim looked at him. The figure's flesh writhed with maggots and mold and leggy things, and when he moved, flies buzzed up. If a man was known by the company he kept, Mim thought, he would have preferred other company. Again he thought of the Book of the Ground in 5 Rings. Pestilence was like a rotting segment of ground. But this was an erroneous association, for Musashi did not talk of decay, but of the importance of basic organization and proper timing in all things. the groundwork for success, and of ascertaining the reality so as to have one thing but to know 10,000 things. Knowledge. There was a prime key. The warrior who knew all things did not waste his effort on what was of no use. Information. That was the first requirement here, to perceive that which could not presently be seen. "I will investigate," Mim decided. He dismounted and looked about. What should he look for? He didn't want to identify with another 11-year-old boy. "There is a government outpost there," Conquest said, pointing. "That will do." Mim strode toward the building. As he came near, 4 men emerged. They were rough-looking types, wearing unkempt uniforms, carrying sidearms and knives. Mim paced himself to overlap the evident leader, and phased in. Again he suffered disorientation, but he was getting the hang of this, and soon he was using the soldier's perceptions. This man was reasonably well-fed and healthy, but dirty and dissatisfied. He had little formal education and owed his position of limited leadership to his muscle and general insensitivity to the plight of others. Mim did not like him at all, but stayed with him because it would have been too much of an investment in time and energy to phase into another body. This overlapping was not pleasant for him, but it seemed to be the best way to get a real feel for the situation. If a person wanted to know how to deal with worms, there was nothing like being a worm for a while. This squad was on a mission. The host was barely literate in Spanish, his native language, but one of his henchmen could read well. "It's the farm across the stream there," the man said. "We'll have to watch it. He's got dogs." "We know how to deal with dogs," the host said, and the others laughed coarsely. They trekked to a small wooden bridge across the river. 2 emaciated children were sitting there. They stretched out their thin arms in a gesture of supplication as the party approached. "Candy?" the little boy begged in Spanish. Mim could understand this language now because he was tuning into the sense of it as rendered by the host's brain. "Get out of our way," the henchman grunted. He lifted his boot, set it against the boy's shoulder, and shoved. With a scream, the boy tumbled backward into the river. "Death Squad!" the little girl cried, struggling to her feet. "Bad men!" She started to run away. "Don't let her go!" the host cried. "Can't have her telling anyone we were here." A henchman strode after the girl and caught her. He hauled her back by one spindly arm. "What do we do with her?" "Kill her," the host said. "But she's just a kid," the henchman protested. "She's a witness," the host clarified. "But we can't just—" "Where are your guts?" the host demanded. "We've got a job to do." He drew his knife. "We don't want noise. I'll show you how to make it quiet." He took hold of the girl's straggly hair, hauled her head up, and brought the knife to her exposed throat. Mim acted. He exerted his will and paralyzed the man's arms. The little girl dropped from the slackening grasp and lay on the ground unmoving. She had fainted. "See? No noise," Mim forced the man's vocal apparatus to say. It was difficult because Mim had to focus the thought without language, forcing it through the brain so that it came out in the proper words. "No noise," the henchman echoed, relieved. "For a minute I thought you were going to kill her." Mim eased up on his control. The host found himself in the awkward position of having done a senseless thing by his definition. He had indeed intended to kill the child. Now he had to explain his action. It was easier for him to pretend that things had gone as planned. "Now you know," he said gruffly, and turned and moved on across the bridge. Mim had navigated that crisis. But had he done it by proper planning and decision, or by simply muddling through? He still had a lot to learn of the way of strategy. They proceeded on toward the farm. Mim now knew that this was a killer group that went surreptitiously to murder individuals who opposed the policies of this nation's government. He had read about these during his military studies. Thousands or tens of thousands had been killed in this manner, but instead of securing the government's power, this had generated a backlash that had become a full-fledged guerrilla revolution. This government was at war with its own people. and would have fallen long ago if not generously supported by powerful outside interests. Mim had no sympathy with terrorism, whether practiced by the government or against it. If this was the way this government operated, his sympathies were with the opposition. But it was not his job to dictate the political system of a nation or the manner it maintained its base of power. It was his job to supervise the violence that resulted. Well, perhaps he could redefine his job. He had succeeded in drastically changing the configuration of the war between Babylonia and Persia. Was there a way to eliminate these death squads here? Aside from arranging another elimination of a head of state, he wasn't sure how. And when he started practicing assassination himself, how did that differ from what the death squads were doing? It was no easy decision. Now the men were near the farmhouses. The dogs spotted them and charged. A henchman tossed down bits of meat that he removed from a special package. The dogs, poorly trained, paused to snap up the meat, and in moments they were writhing on the ground. The bait was poisoned, of course. "He's supposed to be alone today," the literate henchman said. "His wife's off at the big celebration." Mim wasn't able to grasp the exact nature of the celebration. It was tied in too closely with cultural values that did not align with his own. "We'll play it safe anyway," the host said. "We'll surround the house. I'll challenge him from the front. You be ready to catch him when he tries to sneak out the back." They deployed accordingly. But as the host came to the front, the figure of a woman appeared in the doorway. The host cursed under his breath. Mim read his thought. The intelligence had been wrong. The wife was home. Now it would be messy, and they would have to kill her too. They would charge extra for that. The woman disappeared inside the house, slamming the door. The host charged, knowing that time was now of the essence. He would have to catch and kill the woman, because his weak-kneed cohorts wouldn't want to do it. He couldn't have her escaping and bearing the report of the identity of the killers. That would embarrass the employer, who preferred anonymity. He lifted his boot and kicked at the flimsy door. It crashed inward. He stepped over it and into the house. There was the woman, speaking into a telephone. A telephone! There was another vital detail the intelligence report had overlooked. If he had known about that, he would have taken time to cut the wires before approaching the house. It was a nuisance, but had to be done. Now it was too late. She had already made the call. He strode across and swept the phone out of her hand. The woman screamed and spun away from him. He caught at her, getting hold of her shawl. It came free, and he threw it down and grabbed again, this time catching her blouse. That tore as she fought to escape, exposing her haltered bosom. Evidently she had been less formally garbed, and donned her blouse over the halter when she heard activity near the house. The host paused. This was a well-shaped woman. Of course he had to kill her, but it would be a shame to let a form like that go to waste. The henchman would catch the escaping man. He could spare a few minutes. He got both hands on her and bore her back against the wall. She screamed, so he knocked her in the face. Blood welled at her lips, but the scream cut off. He caught at the halter and yanked. The thing was sturdier than it looked. Instead of coming away, it stretched out and down, bearing one of her breasts. The sexual passion of the host was magnified by this sight. He stared at the breast, then reached for it. Mim, bemused at the proceedings, had failed to act in time to abate the host's violence. Now he exerted himself, fighting to control the sudden lust of the man, but though he had been successful in saving the girl-child, he was now up against a greater determination. The host had not really wanted to kill the child, but had intended to do it as a necessary thing. In contrast, he was inflamed by desire to possess this woman before he killed her. Perhaps with more experience Mim could have assumed control. As it was, he could not. While he tried, the host opened his own clothing and brought his body up against that of the woman. Mim gave up the struggle and withdrew. He had possessed 100 different and lovely young women in his life as a prince, but had raped none. He refused to share a body engaged in such an act. Now he stood beside the man and woman, watching the commencement of the rape. He was angry. He touched his sword. Suddenly he was solid. He reached out and grasped the thug's collar and hauled him back. But the man was heavier than Mim, and this pull was not enough. Mim touched his sword again. If the instrument could make him solid, it could make him solider. He reached out a second time, caught the collar, and made a terrific exertion. The man was lifted back and away and hurled at the opposite wall. He collapsed to the floor unconscious. It was as if a giant had thrown him. Curious, despite the situation, Mim turned and struck the wall with his fist. His fist punched right through it. He had indeed become more solid. Ordinary matter was now of a lesser density, so that his flesh had the relative mass of a sledgehammer, and his force was magnified many times. No wonder the thug had flown. The woman was staring right through him. Mim remained invisible. She had no notion what had saved her. Then she recovered her wits and scrambled up and away, simultaneously hauling her halter back into place. The thug had been right about one thing. She was an attractive woman. But now Mim had to attend to the other members of the death squad to prevent them from killing the wealthy farmer. He looked through the house, but saw only the woman hiding behind the stove. The farmer must already be outside, but when he went outside he found the 3 other squad members waiting. The farmer had not emerged. The woman must have been alone. That intelligence was really fouled up. Then Mim heard something. It was a kind of scuffling down the drive leading to the house. Something was coming. More killers from the government. He summoned his horse with a thought, and the animal appeared. Mim mounted, and the horse staggered. Oh, that extra mass! He touched the sword and willed himself back to masslessness. The horse relaxed. They galloped toward the new sound. In moments they spied the source and paused, astonished. It was a troop of ghastly people, shambling along. Their eyes were staring, their mouths hung open, and drool fell across their chins. Their hair was wild, their clothing haphazard. Their arms and legs moved as if operated by marionette strings, jerking up and forward and slapping down. Each one of them seemed about to collapse, but somehow did not. These were not ordinary people. They were zombies. What were they doing here, roused from their ground? From the ground? There was that theme again. Mim watched as the zombie troop shuffled along toward the farmhouse. The members of the death squad saw them and yelled. The leader staggered out, still woozy from his fall. The zombies continued without pause. This could not be coincidence. The woman must have summoned the zombies when she phoned. But that explained only part of the mystery of this occasion. Where had the zombies come from? And how had the woman known about them? Where was the man of the house? Why had he left his lovely wife unprotected? Shots were fired. The zombies proceeded without pause. The death squad members fired again, taking better aim, but still there was no visible effect. They were baffled. Now the woman appeared in the doorway. She yelled at the zombies and pointed to the death squad members. The zombies understood. They pursued the men. Too late, the men realized what they were up against. They tried to scramble away, but the zombies surrounded them. Dangling hands flopped against the men, and slack jaws worked. The attack was inefficient, but it was apparent that the zombies felt no pain, so that nothing the men could do to them had any effect. Each of the men was soon buried under a clumsy mass of bodies, and slobbering mouths labored to bite at living flesh. Mim might have interfered, but found he had no inclination. He knew firsthand the evil of the death squad members. They were not worth saving. Also, he had no desire to make physical contact with the zombies, who were about as repulsive as creatures of human form could be. He realized now that they were not refugees from a graveyard, for none of their flesh was rotting, and there was no earth on them. Rather, they were like almost total idiots. Another horse galloped down from the sky. At first Mim thought it was one of his own companions, but then he realized that the color of the horse did not match those he knew. It wasn't any color, it was pale, though the rider was caped in black. Certainly it was supernatural, however. The horse landed and trotted to him. Now Mim saw the skull features of Thanatos, the incarnation of death. "What are you doing here, Mars?" Thanatos called. "I think I'm supervising a battle. Mim returned in sing-song. "Of precisely what nature I hardly know." "Of an illicit nature," Thanatos said. "Those are zombies." "I had come to that conclusion," Mim agreed, "but they seem to be serving a good cause." Thanatos was obviously agitated. "Do you know what a zombie is?" "An undead," Mim replied. "We have them in India too, though I have never seen them fight a battle before." "A zombie is a living man whose soul has been removed." "Yes, I suppose so. Since life departs with the soul, if the mortal body does not lie still, it is called a zombie." "But these bodies have not been killed," Thanatos said. "They are not on my schedule." "They are evidently on mine," Mim sang. "They are doing a necessary job summoned in defense of that young woman." "You may organize a battle as you choose," Thanatos said, his bone jaw grim, "but you may not impinge on my prerogatives. You may not interfere with the souls of mortals before their deaths." "I don't know how these zombies came to be," Mim sang, "but if they are what it takes to set matters straight, I'm amenable." "If you do not eliminate the zombies, I will," Thanatos said angrily. This sounded like a challenge, and Mim was not in the mood to be challenged on his own turf. Evidently Thanatos represented the ground, but that did not give him leave to interfere with fire. "Show me how to make a zombie, and perhaps I will know how to eliminate one," he sang. "Like this," Thanatos said, and reached his skeletal hand into Mim's body. The fingers passed right through his flesh, which wasn't surprising while he was insubstantial, but then they caught on something within him and pulled on it, and he was abruptly in mortal agony. Thanatos had grasped his soul and was pulling it from his body. Mim reacted involuntarily. He stepped into Thanatos, overlapping him, and exerted his will to take over the other man's mind. That transferred some of his agony to the host, to Thanatos. Thanatos immediately let go of Mim's soul, as now he could only hurt himself. Mim stepped out of the body. They looked at each other. "Incarnations should not quarrel with each other," Thanatos said after a moment. "Agreed," Mim sang. He knew he should not have reacted so imperiously, and was glad to accept the truce. The way of the warrior was a resolute acceptance of death. Here he had death literally before him, and should have accepted death's concern. "But if only you can draw out the soul from a living body, how did these zombies come to be? Certainly I did not create them." "We had better find out." "The young woman summoned them. Perhaps she can answer." They went to the woman, and Thanatos spoke to her. "You must inform us how the zombies came about," he said. The woman seemed startled, as if she hadn't realized that anyone was near. She started to turn to face the cloaked figure. "Do not look at me," Thanatos said quickly. She hesitated, then spoke in Spanish. Mim, now disassociated from the thug host, was unable to understand it, but Thanatos did. "I am the incarnation of death," Thanatos replied to her, "but I have not come for you, only to discover the truth about the zombies." She spoke again, with some force. "The Death Squad thug tried to rape you?" Thanatos asked. He was speaking in English, yet the woman seemed to hear him in Spanish. Mim wondered how that was accomplished, but knew that matter was not worth pursuing at the moment. The woman spoke again. "So you asked the gorilla connection to send help, but you did not know the nature of what would come," Thanatos said, and the woman nodded. "Give me that number that you called," Thanatos said. She protested. It was a secret she could not divulge. "Look at me now," Thanatos said. The woman turned to stare into his face. She quailed, then spoke a number. "Thank you," Thanatos said. He gestured to Mim, and they went into the house. Thanatos picked up the phone and dialed the number. When the connection was made, Thanatos turned to his fine, pale horse. "Mortis, orient on that location," he said. Then he hung up the phone. They went back outside. The zombies were still working on the thugs, and the woman was watching with a certain horrified pleasure. It was not every woman who got such a chance to see an attempted rape and murder so obnoxiously punished. They mounted their steeds. "To that location," Thanatos told his horse. The animal took off. Mim's own mount followed. They galloped swiftly through the air. Soon they came down in a small jungle clearing and trotted to an isolated cabin. This was the place, all right. A number of zombies shuffled about. A trainer was instructing them, evidently teaching them how to walk without falling and how to follow a road. A truck was parked, hidden under a tree, the primary transportation for the zombies. They drove them to the vicinity of the farm, then pointed them toward it, Mim said. That must have been all that was necessary. Yes, but my concern is with the crafting of them. They dismounted and walked to the cabin. It was closed, its windows boarded, so they walked through the wall to enter. A man was inside, using mortar and pestle to work up a white paste. That was all. Thanatos manifested before him. "Look at me, mortal." The man looked up and stiffened. He recognized death. Thanatos questioned him, and Mim picked up the essence. The man had been seeking a better way to purify cocaine and had stumbled upon a savage variation. This product affected the subject so deeply that he passed right through a trance state into somnambulance and could not be aroused. His body lived, but his mind was almost entirely gone. Thus, the zombies, living people deprived of their souls, proceeding without personal volition, doomed to degenerate shortly from neglect. Hence the connection with the incarnation of pestilence. In days, those bodies would be riddled with disease, the prey of flies and worms. Certainly this related to war, for these zombies were being used to oppose the death squads. In fact, the woman's husband, the man the squad had come to assassinate, was involved with this project. When he had gotten news that he was to be hit, naturally he had arranged to test the zombies in action. His brave wife had remained at the house to alert him when the squad arrived. She had been supposed to phone him and hide in the attic, but the premature break-in of the squad leader had cut off her escape. The zombies would have wrapped things up anyway, but only Mim's intercession had spared her from rape and possibly murder before their arrival. However, Mim realized that it was the development of the zombies that had brought him here, so perhaps that was not coincidence. Nevertheless, there was no question that it also overlapped the office of death, since people were being killed, and in a manner that was supposed to be reserved for Thanatos. They were going to have to work this out. Where did they get the people to de-soul by means of this drug? From captive government troops. It made perfect sense to the guerrillas and to Mim, who had just seen how the government operated. But it didn't make sense to Thanatos. If mortals learn how to handle souls, there will be no end of mischief, he declared. This knowledge must be abolished. Mim thought of the way the zombies had shuffled into battle and concluded that Thanatos was correct. Killing was bad enough, but de-souling would give unscrupulous people a motive for more of it. They would generate armies of zombies, and no person would be safe. It would transform war, making it uglier than it already was, because the killing would be done before the battles ever started. "But how can knowledge be abolished?" he sang. "We shall have to get help," Thanatos decided. "Kronos could do it." Because Kronos controlled time, Mim realized. He could tilt his hourglass and cause time to freeze and... No, that wouldn't work. Both Mars and Thanatos had the ability to freeze scenes, but the scenes resumed unchanged later. Kronos would have to run time actually backwards to undo the discovery of the drug. That would complicate the world in other ways. "There must be an easier way," he sang. "Maybe Gaia—" "Yes, Gaia would be best," Thanatos agreed. "She knows how to do things with least disruption. I will summon her." He lifted the heavy black watch he carried to his face and spoke into it as if it were a microphone. "Gaia!" Mist coalesced, thickening and forming into ghostly, then solid shape. Mim, still conscious of 5 rings, recognized this as the manifestation of wind, or air. Musashi also called it tradition. "I was waiting for your call," the voice of Gaia said, slightly before her appearance was complete. "We have knowledge to eliminate," Thanatos said. Gaia frowned. "To eliminate?" she exclaimed. "Since when have you become regressive? Satan thrives on ignorance. I shall explain, Thanatos said. Mim heard something outside. He signaled the others that he would investigate while they clarified the issue, and walked through the wall. Military trucks were pulling up. What was this? More victims for desouling being brought in? The incarnations were taking action none too soon. "The government!" the trainer of the zombies cried. The first truck screeched to a stop, and soldiers piled out of the back. "Take them alive," an officer called. The trainer and the zombies fought as well as they were able, but in minutes all were captive, for the government forces were overwhelming. "Spread out," the officer cried. Mim wasn't sure whether he was speaking English or whether Spanish was becoming intelligible now. "Secure all property, destroy nothing." They were after the secret of making zombies. They must have traced the zombie truck back to its source and mounted a mission to capture both the site and its personnel. Mim stepped back into the building. "The government is coming after the secret," he exclaimed in sing-song. "Too soon," Thanatos said. "We have not yet decided on a way to abolish it." Gaia smiled. "Perhaps we can delay them somewhat," she said. She stepped to and through the wall. Mim and Thanatos followed. Outside, the government troops were combing through the jungle and the clearing, hundreds strong, poking at the ground with bayonets. Before long the line would intersect the cabin. There did not seem to be any way to stop it. "I think fire is best," Gaia said. She raised her hands, her fingers spread, and jags of electricity radiated from them. The jags touched the ground, and fire erupted. It spread between the points of its origin, formed a line, and swept toward the troops. The soldiers were quick to realize their peril. "Fire!" they cried. "They've torched it!" "Beat it out!" the officer cried. "Save that shack!" But the troops were demoralized by the fire. They retreated from it. Gaia turned about. More current flared from her hands. The cabin burst into flame. "But the man inside," Mim sang. Gaia shrugged. "Rescue him, then." Mim strode through the flames and the wall, feeling neither. The man inside was standing, alarmed. Mim caught him by the arm, then touched the sword. The two of them flew up through the roof and into the sky. The man's mouth hung open. He could not believe this was happening. Mim brought them down beside Gaia and Thanatos. The woman turned to the man. "Who besides you knows the secret for making the drug?" she asked. "No one," the man said, his knees seeming to weaken. A streamer of mist poured from Gaia's right hand. Snake-like, it slid toward the man's head and into it. "No one," she repeated. The man's expression changed. "I have forgotten how," he said. "And you will never remember or rediscover it," Gaia said. "Now depart before the troops apprehend you." But the fire will not touch you," she finished. The man walked, neared the line of fire that enclosed the cabin, and walked through it. He was magically protected for the moment. Soon he was out of sight. The officer had succeeded in restoring some discipline in the troops, and they were now attacking the fire with shovels, beating it out. A gap was forming in the fire line. "With the material and equipment destroyed by fire, and the memory of its process gone, they will not be able to fathom the secret," Gaia said. She fuzzed, became vapor, and dissipated. Mim exchanged a glance with Thanatos. "It seems our problem has been solved," Thanatos said. "I have no further interest in the proceedings." He made a signal, and his pale horse appeared at his side. "Wait," Mim sang. "Your friend Luna, did you know that I once loved her cousin?" Thanatos paused. "I did not know. I have not met her cousin, but I understand she is easy to love. Now I love Rapture, and I don't like the influence that Satan is having on her. I want her to be more with Luna, a better influence. But she fears any contact I might have with Luna because of her similarity to Orb." Thanatos smiled. "I will deliver Rapture between Luna's estate and your castle," he said. Mim grasped his bony hand. "I thank you, Thanatos. If I can ever repay the favor, we incarnations must help each other to oppose Satan," he said. "When I help you, I help myself. or now you will oppose Satan's designs on Luna. I will certainly do that. But what is it Satan means to do to Luna? Laches has told me that Luna is destined to balk. She is to cast a decisive vote against Satan's political power on Earth some years hence. Satan means to remove her from political office, or in some way circumvent her so that his will shall govern, and he shall be able to corrupt the mortal realm and gain a majority of souls for himself. This would represent his final victory over God. Satan can do that? Change things about on Earth to suit himself? Why doesn't God stop him? The two made a covenant of non-interference, Thanatos explained. God is good, therefore he honors it and allows free will among the mortals wherever it may lead. But Satan, being evil, violates it and seeks always to win more power. Mim remembered that Gaia had said the same. Still, he found it hard to accept. But then, what is to prevent Satan from winning? The other incarnations, Thanatos said, and the war is now coming to you. Wage it well. I will try, Mim sang, but I remain new in this office and still have much to learn. That is why the next battle must be yours. Satan always attacks the weakest point. Which made sense, Mim realized. But he had little comfort in the realization. 5 rings recommended attacking the enemy's strongest points first. But had the author ever come up against Satan directly?